So suppose I want to analyze the grades on the last test. I have a list of 5 grades. I want to find the mean and standard deviation using TI-nspire. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to get a new document open, and I'm going to go to lists and spreadsheets. It's going to give me up a blank columns and rows here. Now I've already plugged them in. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put in grades up here at the top, and I'm going to list the grades out and underneath that column. Next thing I'm going to do is I want to analyze those grades. So I'm going to go to statistics, because pretty much that's where everything we do is at. We're going to look at the stat calculations, and we're going to go to one variable statistics because we have one variable that we're looking at, and that variable is grades. So the first thing it asks me for is what variable do you want to look at? So I'm going to right arrow key right here. I'm going to choose grades. Now you can also just type it in. Second thing it asks me is how many grades do we have for each one of those data points listed over here. Now we only have 126 and we only have 186. If we had multiple values, we could have a frequency list that told me how many of each of those we had, but since we don't, we just leave it there. I'm not going to include any categories, and I'm going to put my results in column C. I'm going to say OK, and that's going to give me all of this data right here. Now, as you go look through here, the first thing you're going to find is X bar. X bar is your mean. Sum of my x's is 354. That's if I summed all these values. Sum of my x squared, so that's if I squared each of these values and then summed them. We have what's called the standard deviation right here, and this is the one where I divide by n minus 1. You can see the little n minus 1. Now the second one is where we just divide by n on standard deviation. If you know your formula, you'll know the difference between those two. But we always use SX, the standard deviation of the sample right here. All right, so I keep going down. N is 5, which tells me how many values I had, which was 5. The minimum was 26. First quartile was 45.5. Median was 82. Third quartile was 90.5, and the max was 95. Now, down here at the very bottom, we get a value called, that is the sum of the x minus x bar. So it takes each individual value, subtracts the mean, and squares all those. And after it squares each one of those values, it's going to sum all of them. Now, if you look at the formula for standard deviation, that's part of that formula for standard deviation. So that's your mean standard deviation. Anytime you want to find mean and standard deviation of a set of data, there you go.